Rain poured like grief on glass, heavy, endless, cleansing. The city blurred behind the curtain of water, its usual buzz muffled by thunder and the splatter of hurried shoes against flooded pavement. A white dress clung to her body like a memory, makeup streaked, hair undone. The veil, half torn, trailed behind her in the wind. She wasn't running, not really, just moving, like someone trying to outrun a thought too loud to bear. Across the street, under the tilted awning of a closed flower shop, a man knelt beside a broken-down bicycle, one hand steadying the frame, the other tightening a bolt. His jacket was worn at the elbows, grease streaked his knuckles. Raindrops mapped the lines on his face. She stumbled, ankle twisting in her satin heels, landing hard on wet asphalt. A car horn blared, her bouquet scattered like fallen confetti. He dropped the wrench. She looked up. Their eyes met, hers wide with confusion, his with instinct. In 3 long strides, he was at her side, shrugging off his only coat and wrapping it around her shoulders. Then, without words, he lifted his old umbrella, the ribs bent, one spoke dangling, and held it over her. Steam rose from her breath. "Why would you?" He said softly. "You looked like you needed to be rescued." She whispers, "You saved me," as her fiancé watches from the limo. The coat dripped onto a wooden chair, next to a cracked radiator that hissed in the silence. Upstairs, the soft creak of a bunk bed's ladder echoed through the cramped 2-room apartment tucked above the humming shell of Lyle's repair shop. Lyle moved slowly. Every step seemed rehearsed, calculated, the rhythm of a man who carried invisible weight. He dropped spare change into a coffee tin marked "For Emma," then glanced at the time-stamped sticky note on the fridge. Field trip, $12 due Monday. From the other room came the soft rustle of covers and a voice small and sweet. "Daddy?" Emma stood barefoot in pajama pants 2 sizes too short, her curly hair wild from sleep, clutching a violin missing 2 strings. Lyle knelt beside her. "Where'd you get that?" "Found it by the alley dumpster. It wanted me to save it, like you did with that lady." Lyle chuckled under his breath. "People aren't the same as instruments, sweetheart." Emma tilted her head. "But they both need fixing, right?" He didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed a small towel and gently patted her feet dry. She wobbled the violin under her chin like she'd seen in cartoons, squinting through the silence. He watched her, really watched her, as her fingers hovered, unsure, hopeful. "You think I could learn?" "You can learn anything." She smiled, but her eyes studied him longer than a child should have had to. Then softly, "Daddy, why don't you smile anymore?" His hands froze mid-motion. The towel slipped to the floor. Outside, rain tapped against the window like a song forgotten. He couldn't answer. And that silence said everything. The daughter asks, "Daddy, why don't you smile anymore?" Lena stood in front of the mirror, her white dress now folded inside a clear plastic garment bag, zipped tight like a coffin. In the hotel room meant for champagne and bridal photos, silence replaced laughter. A single lamp buzzed in the corner, casting a pale light over unopened gifts and a cake knife that would never be used. Her phone buzzed. 18 missed calls, Matthew. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for the remote and pressed play. On the screen, rehearsal footage flickered. The night before the wedding, everyone smiling, music swelling, Matthew raising a toast. But her eyes were locked on something else. A waiter had tripped, just behind Matthew, spilling wine on a linen cloth. The laughter stopped. Matthew turned, jaw clenched. "You idiot! Do you know what this costs?" The waiter apologized, trembling. His hand hovered near his collar. Voices lowered. Someone cut the camera. She pressed pause. Her hands trembled. The same hands that had once slipped perfectly into Matthew's. The same hands that now hovered between guilt and fury, between love and something uglier. She blinked, and suddenly she was back in the rain. The stranger's coat, that umbrella, that voice. "You looked like you needed to be rescued." She exhaled like she had been holding her breath for years. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, The door handle jiggled. "Lena, we need to talk." "Matthew." She stepped back, pulled the door lock tight, and whispered, "There's nothing left to say." The dress swayed in the garment bag as if it hurt her. Lena sat down, opened her phone again, and rewound the video. This time, she didn't watch Matthew, she watched the waiter. And something in her broke. She watches old video footage of her fiancé yelling at a waiter. Something in her breaks. The rain had stopped 2 days ago, but the city still smelled like metal and memory. Lena wandered the street with a paper coffee cup clutched in her gloved hands, boots scuffing the edge of the sidewalk. No veil, no heels, just herself, finally small in a city she'd never walked in alone. She didn't know what she was looking for, only that the coat still hung in her closet, and she hadn't slept since the man who gave it to her disappeared into the rain. A flower shop came into view, its windows fogged from the inside. A child's laughter spilled out through a crack in the door. Lena slowed. There, beside a rusted repair sign and the scent of old rubber, stood the man, crouched again, sleeves rolled up, holding a chain in one hand and a peanut butter sandwich in the other. He was teaching a little girl to fix a bicycle. "That's the brake cable," he said, gently guiding her hand. "Not too tight, Em. You want it to stop without throwing you off." Lena leaned against the lamppost, heart pounding like she'd found something she didn't know she'd lost. The girl giggled. "Like you when you fixed that lady's shoe in the rain." He laughed. Wasn't fixing. More like catching a ghost. Emma noticed her first. "Daddy," she whispered, pointing. "That's her." He looked up. Their eyes met, again. Without rain, without panic, just silence, sunlight, and something unspoken passing between them. Lena took a slow step forward. "Do you always save people in the rain?" He didn't smile, but something in his eyes softened. Only the ones who looked like they've never been saved. The umbrella she carried was new, black, glossy, stamped with a small corporate logo. She'd bought it on impulse, as if an object could be an apology or a bridge. He was elbows deep in a hub, grease darkening the cuff of his shirt. Emma hummed a tune, tapping a rhythm on the wheel while he adjusted a spoke. The repair shop smelled of oil, wet cardboard, and boiled coffee. A poster for a local talent show sagged on the wall, taped crooked. Lena cleared her throat. "I brought you something." Her voice was steady but soft, like a musician striking a single careful note. He glanced up. "You didn't have to." She handed him the umbrella. He took it as if it were fragile, then, for a second, as if accepting an offered truth. Sunlight caught the logo and made it wink. "You didn't have to come back either," he said. "I needed to say thank you, and I wanted to ask, would you consider working for my father? He runs events. We need hands who know how to fix things when the world doesn't fail. You said you like fixing things." He wiped his hands on a rag. Emma watched, eyes bright, as if this were a magic trick about to happen. "You think I want to wear a suit?" "Not a suit, a chance." She met him. For a moment, the air between them buzzed, neither rain nor ruin, but possibility. Then he shook his head slowly and folded the umbrella closed, the fabric whispering. "I appreciate it," he said carefully, voice low as a confession, "but I don't fit in your world." He declines, saying, "I don't fit in your world." The wine in Lena's glass had barely moved. She sat alone in the corner of a cafe she used to visit before fittings and floral consultations consumed her afternoons. Through the window, a light drizzle painted the street silver. Across the sidewalk, a young couple stood under a bus shelter, laughing through soaked hair, fingers interlaced like roots. Lena stared until her reflection blurred against the glass. The server refilled her water and lingered, unsure. "You okay, miss?" She nodded, then softly, "I was supposed to be married last week." He hesitated. "He left you?" She smiled bitterly. "No, I left him." Silence settled between them like dust. When he walked away, she reached for her phone. A folder labeled "Wedding, Matthew" waited, untouched. She opened it. Clip after clip, polished speeches, venue walkthroughs, cake tastings with stiff smiles. But behind it all, tension. Matthew correcting her posture, interrupting, ordering wine she never wanted, telling her what colors suited her skin tone. Then one video, buried near the end, grainy, caught by a friend's phone, Matthew laughing with his groomsmen, then turning sharply on a florist for being late, his voice rising, her name shouted. She paused the video, finger trembling on the screen. The memory bloomed how often her voice went missing in rooms filled with decisions. How "I want" slowly became "whatever you think." Outside, the couple kissed as rain danced across their shoulders. No tuxedos, no veil, just drenched joy. Lena swallowed the lump in her throat. "Why don't I feel that?" she whispered, voice barely audible. A tear traced her cheek. It didn't feel like heartbreak. It felt like waking up. She watches a couple kiss in the rain and softly cries, "Why don't I feel that?" It was Sunday morning. Light spilled across the sidewalk like honey, warm and gentle. Outside the shop, the shutters rattled as Lyle pried them open, his hands stained with grease, his soul still carrying a tired kind of hope. Lena had returned. No umbrella, no excuse, just curiosity blooming into something quieter. She stood beside the doorframe, watching. Inside, Emma sat cross-legged on a wooden crate, her hands curled around a chipped, stringless violin. She cradled it like it breathed. "Where'd she get that?" Lena asked, stepping closer. "Found it in the alley," Lyle replied without looking up. "Been glued to it ever since." Emma pressed the instrument beneath her chin. There were no strings, but she moved her fingers anyway, bowing through silence like it meant something. Lena stilled. "She doesn't know how to play," Lyle said, almost apologetic. "No," Lena murmured. "She does. Not with sound, but with posture, with breath, with that stillness children only find when something bigger than them takes over." Emma closed her eyes and moved the bow one more time. The scrape of wood against wood, then stillness. She opened her eyes and smiled. "Did you hear it?" Lena's heart caught. "I think I did." Emma looked proud, like she'd built a world from broken parts. Lyle leaned against the counter, arms folded. "She's always dreaming." "Let her," Lena said softly. Their eyes met, hers full of something he hadn't seen before. Awe. Maybe even purpose. "She deserves a stage," Lena whispered. Lyle blinked, and for the first time, didn't argue. The bride whispers, "She deserves a stage." The grand office smelled of aged whiskey, mahogany, and rules carved in stone. Gold-framed photos lined the walls, Lena's childhood, polished vacations, handshakes with mayors. But none of them showed her smiling without effort. Across from her, Victor Morgan, her father, poured 2 glasses of scotch, placing one in front of her like a peace offering carved from stone. She didn't touch it. "You've been seen," he said, "on that side of town, with a man who owns more socket wrenches than shirts." Lena didn't flinch. "He helped me, that's all." Victor leaned back, eyes narrowing. "You left a man with a 7-figure salary and global partnerships for someone who fixes chains in a basement?" "I left a man who yelled at waiters." Silence crackled. Victor tapped his ring against the glass. "I've built a reputation. I pulled you from ashes when your mother died. Now you want to burn it all over. What? Gratitude?" Her voice trembled, but she stood her ground. "No, I want to feel like I exist, not perform." Victor stood slowly, eyes narrowing. "You are my daughter. You do not get to disappear into poverty and call it a purpose." She met his eyes, The same sharp blue as hers, but colder. I'm not disappearing. I'm showing up for the first time. He crossed the room, grabbing a folder from his desk. Contracts, inheritance, board seats. Walk away from this fixer, and everything stays as planned. Continue, and don't expect a cent. She stared at the glass in front of her, untouched, trembling. You're risking everything for a mechanic with a child? She stood slowly, smiled small, defiant. Then maybe everything was never mine to begin with. You're risking everything for a mechanic with a child. The town square was dressed in color. Checkered picnic blankets, mason jar lanterns swaying from trees, the scent of kettle corn in the air. It was the kind of weekend festival Lena used to attend in Pearls, now walking quietly through in jeans and borrowed courage. Children swirled around a balloon artist, an old man played harmonica near the coffee cart, and at the far end, under a patch of tree-filtered light, a cardboard sign read, "Music repairs the soul." A bucket beside it had a few coins, and next to it, Emma, violin now restrung with mismatched wires, standing straight as a reed. Lyle sat behind her, guitar on his knee, tapping his foot. His fingers moved slow, deliberate, and she followed his rhythm. The song wasn't perfect, notes wobbled, but it had something raw, honest. People stopped. Some smiled. Some stayed. The music swelled, a folk tune, gently altered, reshaped by the hands of two people who lived more than they said. Emma's bow trembled at first, then steadied. Her eyes closed. Lena stood at the edge of the crowd, breath caught somewhere between wonder and grief. She had seen dozens of violinists at black tie galas, none like this. She placed a folded bill in the bucket, didn't speak, didn't need to. When the song ended, the crowd clapped. Emma curtsied, cheeks pink with joy. Lyle stood, nodding his thanks, and finally noticed her. Their eyes met again, but this time something shifted. He saw it, the softness in her gaze, the way her hand lingered on her chest. He saw her feel it. And for the first time, she looked afraid of what that feeling might become. She watches from a distance, visibly shaken. The father notices. The shop was quieter after dark. Tools hung in their places like sleeping soldiers. A sable bulb swung from the ceiling, casting a circle of golden light over the counter, where two mugs steamed, untouched. Lena sat on an overturned crate. Lyle stood by the sink, rinsing a cloth with more focus than needed. "You were incredible today," she said gently. He didn't answer right away, just squeezed the cloth, water dripping slow into the drain. People clapped, she continued. Not because she was perfect, because she was real. You gave her that. He finally turned. She found that violin. All I did was replace strings. No, Lena said softly. You built the melody beneath them. A pause. Heavy. Then he exhaled. Not a sigh, but something deeper, letting go. I used to play. Jazz clubs, dive bars, some weddings. Never big time. Lena hinted in. What changed? He swallowed. Got married. Emma came early. Bills came faster. My wife, she believed in the music more than I did. Said it made me whole. A flicker of memory passed over his face like smoke. She got sick. Fast. There wasn't time. I sold my guitar for hospital bills, stopped playing.
started fixing things instead. Silence. Lena's voice was barely above a whisper. You never wanted this life, did you? He looked down. Wanted her, wanted Emma to have more than I did. That was enough. A long moment. She reached across the counter and placed her hand over his, not in pity, but in recognition. You didn't lose it, she said, eyes shining. It's still in you. The envelope sat on the counter, bright and sharp against the grease-stained surface. The logo from the city's music conservatory printed in blue and gold. Lena had brought it herself. They have scholarship programs for gifted children, she said, her voice dancing between hope and restraint. Emma could learn from real musicians. They'd give her a violin, a stage. Weil barely looked at it. He was wiping down a wrench like it might tell him what to say. Emma, across the room, was humming to herself, scribbling music notes on napkins, pretending they made sense. She's not ready, he said. She's more than ready, Lena replied. Lyle's jaw tightened.
The umbrella tilted as the wind picked up. She stepped closer, holding it steady. This time she was the one sheltering him. This time she didn't need saving. She just needed him to know he was worth standing in the rain for. And he finally let her. This time she covers him with the same umbrella he gave her. The apartment was quiet. Emma had gone to sleep early, curled under a blanket with her music notebook pressed to her chest. Lyle stood near the window, watching the city glow in wet reflections. His eyes drifted to the violin case, the one Emma found in the alley, now resting on the kitchen table like a secret waiting to be heard. Something tugged at him. He opened it. The velvet lining had torn in one corner, revealing a small slit tucked beneath the padding. Curious, he peeled it back and found a folded piece of paper, fragile, yellowed, carefully hidden. It wasn't sheet music. It was a note, handwritten. To whoever finds this violin saved me. I hope it saves you too. Play it for someone you love. Let it speak where your words can't. Because music always remembers, even when we forget who we are. No name, just those words. Lyle sat down hard, as if the chair caught a weight he'd never let anyone carry. His hands trembled. He remembered nights when his wife had curled beside him, humming along as he played. How she used to say, "You'll come back to it when you're ready, when the world softens." He hadn't believed her, until now. He stood slowly, stepped toward the room where Emma slept, and looked through the crack in the door, saw her hand resting on the notebook, her lips moving in a dream. He turned back to the violin case, read the note again, folded it carefully, then whispered into the room, as if speaking to a memory and a future at once. Maybe we can begin again. He stares at the note, trembling. Maybe we can begin again. The theater wasn't grand, just a community hall with creaky floors and folding chairs. But to Emma, it looked like Carnegie Hall. Her shoes tapped nervously as she peeked through the curtain. Lyle stood behind her, adjusting her collar, wiping invisible dust from her shoulders. "Are you nervous?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Good," he smiled. "That means it matters." In the audience, Lena took a seat in the third row, 2 programs in her hand, one for herself, one for Lyle. Though he hadn't sat down yet, he lingered in the wings. The lights dimmed. A hush fell, Emma stepped out, tiny violin in hand, knees trembling, chin high. For a moment, she froze under the brightness. Then, she closed her eyes. The first note was shaky. The second, clear. By the fifth, the entire room leaned in. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. Each note carrying every hour of practice, every quiet night of dreaming on napkin staves, every ounce of her father's belief finally unlocked. Lyle stood just behind the curtain, eyes glassy, his hands clenched, not in fear, but in pride he didn't know where to place. When it ended, the room erupted, applause like thunder. Emma beamed. Lyle walked slowly to his seat, third row, beside Lena. He didn't say a word, but his hand found hers, gently. Lena leaned in, still watching the girl bow, her curls bouncing. "She's not the only one who belongs up there," she whispered. Lyle didn't reply. He just looked forward, watching Emma with tear-filled eyes, and believed her. The bride sits next to him and whispers, "She's not the only one who belongs up there." The church was full, lace draped across pews, musicians tuning softly in the corner. Guests in polished shoes glanced at their watches, confused by the absence of a groom and a bride. And then the doors opened. Lena entered, alone. No veil, no bouquet, just a soft blue dress and a quiet calm that silenced the room more than any organ ever could. Whispers swirled, cameras lifted. She stepped forward slowly, her heels echoing against marble, and stood where vows were meant to be spoken. "I know this isn't how you imagined today, but I didn't come here to marry anyone." A collective murmur. She looked out at the guests, at the carefully curated crowd built by family reputation, and exhaled. "I came here to unchoose what was never truly mine, to let go of the version of myself I've been performing for years." She glanced at her father. His jaw was locked, but he said nothing. "I thought weddings were about finding your forever, but sometimes forever is knowing when to stop pretending." She placed the mic down gently. The silence felt like freedom. Then she turned and walked down the aisle, not escorted, not rushed, just whole. Outside, the sunlight was blinding, and there they were, Lyle holding Emma's hand, both of them waiting at the gate. No judgment, just quiet belief. Lena smiled, tears in her eyes. Not because she was walking away from something, but because, for the first time, she was walking towards it. She walks out in silence and finds them waiting at the gate. The shop was different now. The oil-stained floor had been scrubbed, painted warm terracotta. Where tools once hung, a chalkboard menu now listed herbal teas, vinyl record hours, and violinimessons. In bold white paint above the door, the listening room. Music, memory, second chances. Lyle tuned a guitar near the window. Lena arranged a vase of wildflowers on a table. Emma perched on a stool, guided a boy's small hands across a piano's chipped keys. Sunlight filtered in, soft and golden. Everywhere, quiet laughter, scraped chairs, clinking mugs, the gentle background hum of lives being rebuilt. A teenage girl sang near the mic, off-key, nervous. The room didn't flinch. They clapped like she was Ella Fitzgerald. After the song, Lena stepped beside Lyle, bumping his shoulder. "You ever think we'd end up here?" she whispered. He looked around at the mismatched chairs and donated instruments. "At first, I just wanted to fix bikes. And now?" He smiled. "Now, I just want to keep the music going. Emma rushed over with a flyer. They want me to play at the city fair next month. Lena knelt, beaming. You'll be brilliant. The bell above the door jingled. A girl stood there, soaked from the rain, hugging a violin case like armor. She looked scared, small, alone. Lyle walked toward her and knelt. First time? He asked gently. She nodded. Then come on in, he said, offering his hand. Emma peered beside him, grinning. You just have to play like you mean it. The girl stepped inside. The rain kept falling outside, but this place had a roof, and hearts, and music that knew how to hold people together.